Good morning, y'all. We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. As always, I am your host, Justin Michael. I got a fun show packed ahead for you. We're going to talk some staff changes coming for CSU football, some shifts in roles. Been kind of a weird 24 hours, admittedly, just with how this this process has played out in terms of the information being disseminated, potentially some quirkiness behind the scenes. I'll explain as best as I can here today as far as the potential roles on the CSU football offensive staff shifting and having a play caller and all that stuff we've been speculating about since the end of the season. We'll get into a big win over Air Force for CSU men's hoops. Now on a 4-game win streak, really responded well coming off of what was probably their worst performance of the year at San Diego State. To beat a pair of front range rivals by double digits, really win those games convincingly. And then sandwiched in between, you have a pair of big wins where you execute, or you out execute, I should say, your opponent over the final minute. Just kind of feels like this team is stringing together the type of key stretches that they just weren't able to in November, especially late in games. They're showing a killer mentality when the game is there for the taking. I feel like CSU has won the final 5-ish minutes of the last 4 games, on top of some quality play outside of that, but they've really been closing games strong. And that's the signature of a good team. So I'm excited to see how this year plays out with them. I'm excited to see how the second half of the league slate plays out for this team. We'll get into all of that. I'll give some thoughts on Nicola Japa, the new fan favorite. Then we'll get into some questions, comments, and all of that. Here at the beginning, I did want to briefly just kind of talk about the statement that was released by Gloria Nevarez, the Mountain West commissioner, yesterday, raising a lot of speculation. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it basically is saying that the schools that had agreed to stick around in the Mountain West are all in alignment, that there's an implication there that everybody signed the grant of rights. I'm not sure how enforceable a GOR is if you don't have a media rights deal in place. There's some speculation about all of that. I know that's been a thing with the ACC as well. We'll kind of talk about that in the bigger picture tomorrow, talk about all the rumors that are floating. The one thing that I will say today, though, is just that I have not historically seen commissioners in these spots release public statements like this when they feel that they are operating from a position of strength. Now, that's speculation on my part, to be fair. I, like all of you, I have no idea what's going to happen with the rest of this. Behind the scenes for like a year leading up to the formulation of the Pac-12, with the original Mountain West schools that left CSU, Fresno State, Boise, and San Diego State, I had heard for a long time that Washington State and Oregon State much more interested in rebuilding, picking and choosing, going the a la carte route rather than a full reverse merger with the Mountain West. It's obviously created a lot of drama. I didn't initially see Utah State being a part of the process. A lot of this has been pretty dramatic, to be honest. It's made for good theater. But we'll talk tomorrow more about all this. I'll give my Mountain West power ranking, all that fun stuff, since CSU is on a bye this week. Before we get into everything, I'll also play some clips from Nico Medved, I should say, later on. But before we get into everything, talk about these staff changes real quick. I do want to shout out a couple of our partners who make all of this possible. We've got some of the best around, and we're going to start by shouting out the homies over at Game Time. Nobody does it quite like Game Time. They make it easier than ever to get the best deals on tickets to all your favorite events. We're talking sports. They've got Nuggets, they've got Avs, they've got great deal on college tickets. If you're looking for CSU tickets, no better option than with Game Time. And with the Game Time Picks feature, it's never been easier. They filter out all the fluff. They only show you the best of the best. The thing about Game Time is they have so many tickets, it can almost be a little bit overwhelming. They've solved that with the Game Time Picks curation feature. All in pricing, the price that you see is the price that you pay. You're not going to get hit with a million fees like other places. They've got the lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you can find tickets in the same section, same row for less. They've got some of the best flexible coverage around in terms of ticket insurance and all that stuff. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account. Use that code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account. Redeem that code DNVR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price is guaranteed. I also want to talk to you guys about Toyota. You know the drill. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics. They're also the official vehicle of DNVR. And trucks have been a part of their generation, or have been a part of their DNA for generations, whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world. There's a truck that's right for you. Check out the Tacoma or the Land Cruiser. Both are awesome. They've got 17 models with all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, which are perfect for Colorado, especially January, February, snow season is upon us. Not about it, guys, but with a Toyota, it is certainly a lot easier to get around. They've got 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. All right, let's get into it. It's been a weird 24 hours, admittedly. How this process has played out is not how I prefer to operate from an information dissemination standpoint. It's been a little weird, a little wonky. I guess we'll start, about 3 weeks ago, I floated the possibility on this show of some potential changes coming within the staff, some guys being elevated, some roles shifting. Chase Holbrook, who had been an offensive analyst, he was going to take over in that QB coach role, which Mumme had. I said that Mumme potentially could be elevated to a play calling role, whether that be an offensive coordinator, passing game coordinator, whatever you want to call it. I talked about that being a possibility. Yesterday, briefly, it had been taken down. They're going to repost it today. I believe the information is going to be the same, though. Yesterday, CSU Football makes an announcement regarding some of the staff changes, one of which, Holbrook, he gets elevated to QB coach. Also, Bill Best, the O-line coach, is now the run game coordinator. In addition to being the O-line coach, Mike Goff, the assistant O-line coach, he had been working behind the scenes kind of as Bill Best's right-hand man, has been great for the program. He worked at San Diego State for a long time. Great that they were able to hang on to him, to be honest. I thought he would get a head gig or a lead O-line coach gig somewhere else. Great that they're able to keep him. There's no clarification within the statement regarding play calling. And obviously that is what everybody wanted to know the most is, okay, he's the passing game coordinator now. He'd already been the associate head coach. He still is. What does that mean? So I reached out to sources that I trust, sources with direct knowledge of the information. I've been talking to a lot of people over the last month. The message has been the same, and that's why I'd stuck to what I had been speculating. I'd mentioned a couple of times. I'm not backing down from this. As far as I have heard from people that would know, Matt Mumme is going to be the play caller for CSU football in 2025. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't necessarily be a collaborative effort. It was kind of that way in Reno with Nevada, or it was kind of that way with the Wolfpack for a while back when Norvell and co were still in Reno. Obviously, a lot of people replied to me, is this a good thing? Mumme at one point was the lead play caller for Nevada in 2019. About halfway through the year, Jay Norvell ended up taking over those play calling duties, and then he kept them in 2020. If you go back and read the articles, there's some good stuff from Nevada Sportsnet. They do a great job of covering the Wolfpack, great local site, which we love to support regional coverage. I think the Mountain West in particular has some great local beats. But they've got a lot of coverage about it. And it's interesting because Norvell is kind of coy about the process. When he was asked about it, one game, all of a sudden Norvell has a play sheet and, he gets asked, are you now a part of the play calling process? And he's like, yeah, kind of a little bit. And then he ultimately ends up taking over that role full time. He's been the play caller since he came over. I did not anticipate that he would give them up just because he's been a long-time play caller at a lot of big schools. It's how he made his way up in this industry. There's a lot of quotes with him talking about how much he enjoys it. But there's also some quotes with him talking about how it's all-consuming and it is a process. And most certainly from a game management standpoint, I think that there is room for CSU to improve. And I think one of the ways that that could happen is by handing over the play calling duties to somebody you trust. It doesn't mean you're going to be apart from the offense altogether, but it just allows you to be more of a CEO type and kind of have your handprint on the entire team as a whole, like you do in practice, but now in the game, which is hard to do when you are the lead play caller and you're trying to manage the game. How much are you really able to lock into the defense and what's going on? Or if you are locked in on defense, is that then hurting you from a play calling standpoint? Again, it's just a lot to manage. I have confirmed with all the sources that I trust that this is, as of now, and obviously things could change down the line, but that is the plan, is for Matt Mumme to be the play caller. I would prefer to normally, wait to announce something like this until I had spoken with Jay Norvell and got it on the record from him. Admittedly, I jumped the gun a little bit with the release. I just thought it was an oversight that they didn't have it in the release and that they were going to, then release that clarification afterwards. That's on me. I should have reached out to CSU first and told them, hey, I'm going to drop this significant report. Do you have any type of comment? When I reached out, a CSU spokesperson, they told me that as of now, there has not been a decision made regarding who will be the play caller. That's what CSU is saying officially, at least, as of now. So we'll see how all of this plays out. Most certainly, I will ask Jay about it the next time we have an opportunity to speak with him. I'm not really sure what the deal is. It could be a semantics thing. It could be he had a vision for how this was all going to be announced, and I might have just messed that all up, which I wouldn't have intended to do. But obviously, this is information that CSU fans really want to know. And like I said, I do trust my sourcing on this. I wouldn't go out on a limb like this if I didn't trust my sources, if I didn't know that what I was telling you at the moment is true. And so I do stand behind my reporting on all this. Again, this has been kind of a wonky process. I don't really know why it's not being released, because it's information that is out there. There are people outside the program that know it. I've heard it from sources that I trust inside the program. I've heard it from people outside the program. It's been info that's been out there for like a month. Now, some of it still may have been a little bit fluid at that original time, when I first started floating this, but based on everything that I've heard behind the scenes, this is going to happen. Again, we'll see what Norvell has to say when we ultimately get an opportunity to speak with him. I would imagine with signing day coming up at some point, there will be a press conference or something like that. I'll try to get him on the show as well so we can talk about it. But potentially a pretty significant change, obviously, for CSU football. What could that mean for CSU? I think might surprise some people. I saw a lot of comments about, oh man, they're going to go 4 verts every single play. It's going to be, like a Mike Leach-esque air raid. And that's certainly possible, but that's never really the air raid that they ran at Nevada. Now, there are some reasons behind that, especially early on. There's kind of some, I guess, political things you had to consider, just in terms of Nevada had this infamous pistol offense. And, Chris Alt had been there forever. And I think the feeling was essentially that we kind of have to keep some elements of this pistol as an homage to him. We can't just change everything overnight. That's not going to sit well with the Nevada fan base. And so they kind of created this hybrid air raid out of the pistol, which they actually discovered allowed them to run the ball with more effectiveness. And again, kind of going back to what I said, I think there's some misconceptions now. It is possible that they just open it up and throw the ball 50 times a game. I don't expect that, because I do think they they found some stuff they can build off with the run game this year. And you've got some really talented running backs, obviously. But when you look at like what they did at Nevada, there was always an emphasis to run the ball. They had, Tua Tawa, or however you pronounce his name, really beast of a running back for a couple years. And they tried to kind of introduce some power elements like what Jay ran at Oklahoma. So again, I don't think they're just going to completely go away from the run game, but I do imagine if Mumme is the play caller, we do see things kind of open up. He's got great rapport with BFN. They've obviously brought in a lot of receiving talent. One of the things that I found was interesting, and I want to credit Nevada Sportsnet for this, is that Norvell actually threw the ball, at least in Reno, more than Mumme did when he took over the play calling duties. It was more like it was closer to 50-50, when Mumme was the play caller, and it was more like 60-40 in terms of a pass run when Norvell took over. So again, maybe some misconceptions about what this ultimately could mean for CSU in the end. But this is what I expect to happen. I know I've been rambling about this because the whole process has been kind of wonky. Admittedly, makes me a little bit uncomfortable. I don't really understand why there's been kind of a song and dance to this. But we'll just have to see. Ultimately, I'll get an opportunity to ask Norvell about it on the record. We'll say what he's willing to. We'll see what he's willing to say publicly, and we'll see what ultimately happens with all of this. But that's what I've heard. That's what I know now. That's what I feel very strongly is going to happen based on the information that I've been told by people that would know this, that got really good sourcing on this, but has been kind of a weird process. And again, like I'm not trying to make it seem like it's CSU is doing something wrong or anything like that. Like coaches, they can be really meticulous and really methodical about how they want something to be rolled out. They might have thought it was a strategic advantage, frankly, to not have this come out publicly. So like there's a lot of stuff to consider. I'm not trying to make it seem like it's this big dramatic thing. There have been points in my career where I do feel like CSU as an institution was combative with me and did not like what I was saying. And that's been a long time ago. That was, mostly the Eustace type stuff way back in the day. It's nothing like that. It's nothing dramatic. But it has been kind of weird how this process has played out. And so again, while I do trust my sourcing, like I tweeted that I can confirm. I can't confirm necessarily because CSU is not going on the record and confirming it. But I really do stand behind this reporting, and I promise you my information is solid, and I'm doing the best that I can to keep you guys informed while, like maintaining relationships and doing that whole song and dance. And I just want you guys to have all the information that you crave. So yeah, shout out to everybody in the Toyota chat. Appreciate everybody that's rocking with us this morning. If you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up on YouTube, I certainly would appreciate it. We are going to get into hoop stuff here in just a second. If you guys have any questions, comments on anything, throw them in the Toyota chat. We'll get to them at the end after we get into some hoops takeaways, after I play some clips of Nico Medved post game as well. All right, real quick, do want to shout out the homies over at Coors Light. I don't know if you can see it in the background. Got a Coors hat hanging up above the set. Love Coors as Colorado as it gets. They encourage you to choose a chill mindset. I've had to choose a chill mindset myself. Been a long 6 to 8 months. Just a lot going on in the personal life. Still a lot of annoying stuff going on behind the scenes. It's been easy to get worked up, and I don't want to be a bummer. I want to be fun on the show. I want to be just a general chill guy, and that's what Coors Light encourages you to do. Then when you're kicked back, when you're chilling, crack open that ice cold Coors Light when the mountains turn blue. Cold as the Rockies, cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smooth finish. Choose chill this winter, then reach for a Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing, Golden, Colorado. Choose chill. I also want to shout out the Circle K, who I'm going to have to hit up later. I'm due for some snacks. I'm a gas station snack guy. I love the CSU Hoops road win tradition because it makes me feel less guilty about going out and getting myself a treat. We might just have to make that a thing. Every time the Hoops team wins, they're posting their snacks. I jokingly posted the Doritos after the Fresno win the other night. Ram Nation, you guys should treat yourself to a little treat too, and you should do it at Circle K. If you do, send us a picture. It's awesome. They've got all kinds of great deals on snacks. They've got some really good Circle K brand snacks. Their chocolate covered peanuts are awesome. If that is your thing, if you sign up for the Circle K Inner Circle, you can receive 25 cents off per gallon on your next 5 fill-ups. Download the Circle K app and sign up for the Inner Circle for exclusive offers. New offers, purchase clubs, and sweepstakes are updated weekly. All right. Shout out to Circle K. Shout out to all of you. We were due to pay the bills, Aaron. You are right about that. I want to set the scene for that win over Air Force, CSU 79-58 on Tuesday night. Really impressive second half performance. Looked like the first 10-15 minutes or so might be much like the last 2 years when Air Force had taken CSU to overtime. They actually won one of those games. Brutal. They had been a pain in CSU's side for a couple years. It's a frisky matchup. Even that game in the Springs, like, you never want to overlook them. Ethan Taylor is an all-conference guard that'll probably go on to be like a rocket scientist or something like that. The academy's crazy. He was balling 15 points in the first 12 minutes. That's what he averages per game. He had it in the first 12 minutes. We're like, oh God, is this dude about to go full Kendall Williams and drop 46? Didn't end up playing out like that. Made some key defensive adjustments. Ethan Morton, his defensive impact in this game was massive. I know he hasn't been the most popular player at times due to some of his offensive struggles, getting tongue-tied all over the place today. But his ability to come in and really slow Taylor down, I thought, was huge. And CSU, really on both sides of the ball, just locked in. I mentioned in the intro that I've been impressed with their ability to close in the second half of this one, especially both sides of the ball. I thought it was quality play. Here's Nico Medved and his instant reaction to that 21-point win over Air Force on Tuesday night. Maybe. It's live TV. Sometimes we have some technical issues.
It always is against these guys. I thought Ethan Taylor was going to have 50 at one point, and he's been shooting the ball like that. And we gave him kind of 2 open looks, got him going, and then man, he started making. It didn't matter. I feel like we almost were tackling him, and he was making shots. But I just didn't like our mentality defensively in the first half. I thought we were kind of soft. I don't think our hands were very active. I didn't think we contested shots worth a dang. And I guess, it's safe to say it was an eventful halftime that way. And, talking about making adjustments. And it wasn't about making an adjustment. It's about how about let's do it the way we're supposed to do it. And, man, I didn't even realize at the time, but, man, to hold the team to 16% in the second half is pretty hard to do. And I think we outscored them 26-2 in the paint. And I thought Ethan Morton's defense on Ethan Taylor was terrific. I thought he really came and changed the game on him. I thought Nicola came in the game clearly and brought some energy at that spot. And I thought even Bowen Bourne, I just thought he came in the game. It just brought some more juice to our operation. And once we were able to guard, that's when the game broke. And it reminded our guys after the game, that's been the recipe this season in every game we've had success. It started on that end of the floor. And so maybe we just needed a little bit of reminder, and boy, we really played well in the second half.
All right, big shout out to Ethan Morton for his defensive impact in that game. I thought it was huge. I mean, he's 6 of 10 from the floor in the first half. He's got 15 points, 3 of 5 from deep. A couple of those threes were pretty impressive. I think some of Medved's frustration early on was that they gave him a couple of gimmies right out of the gate, and then he got going. Now he's feeling himself. Now he starts making a couple of tough shots, but they just made him work so much harder in that second half. He only went 2 of 7 from the floor over those final 20 minutes, only 1 of 3. I did get to the line a couple of times. Air Force as a team, they shot 50% from the floor in that first half. It's why it's only a 1-point game at the break. And in the second half, they're 4 of 25 from the floor. It's just 16%. Really dominant defensive effort for CSU. They didn't give up a field goal over the last 5 minutes. That killer instinct has just been huge. Air Force, one of their last 16 from the floor. So CSU with an opportunity to earn an important home win, and all the games are important at this point, but you can't afford to slip up against a team like Air Force if you want to keep pace in this Mountain West title race. And the Rams stepped on the throat, which was just great to see. I feel like this team continues to improve. It's not perfect. There are ugly stretches. It's college basketball, guys. It's always going to be a grind in college hoops. And when you look across the board in the league right now, it's just kind of that way for everybody outside of really Utah State, who just is an anomaly. I don't understand how they maintain this consistent success given the turnover that they've had with players and coaches the last couple of years. It's incredible. But nobody's unbeatable in this league. And there's nobody in this league that you can afford to overlook. I mean, we saw Air Force. They should have beat San Diego State. They had them on the ropes. We've seen San Jose State push multiple teams to the brink. They should have beat San Diego State the other night, too. I don't know what's up with the Aztecs. They are as hot and cold as I have seen them be. You probably got to go back to like that last Steve Fisher year, or maybe it was the year after that, actually, where they were like right around 500 for most of the Mountain West slate, and then they still win the Mountain West tournament. It was kind of like Boise winning the league in 2023, where it's like they're not even that good, and then you look up and they still win the league. But this is a game where you could have let it get out of hand if you came out flat in the second half. I don't think that CSU necessarily played poorly in the first half. I just don't think they were fully locked in. I thought early on they had a pretty good offensive mentality, playing inside out, getting to the hoop, which is always key for them. I mean, they shoot a lot of threes. It's a big part of what they do. That's no surprise. I like, though, that in that second half especially, there was a concerted effort to get to the rim. They got to the hoop for 8 straight points to begin that second half. They finished with a plus 24 advantage in points in the paint in that second half. So not only were they dominant there, they weren't allowing Air Force to get anything. That's not a big part of what they do. But if you're sloppy, if you give up driving lanes, they've got guys that'll take that, especially somebody like Ethan Taylor, who's crafty. And really just on both sides of the ball, I was really impressed with how CSU played in that second half against Air Force. Most certainly the level of competition is only going to get harder from here, but it's a team that really embraces the opportunity to come into Moby to play spoilers. It's an in-state rival, if you will. I'm always a little bit hesitant to call it a rival. I think it gets blown out of proportion to an extent. I mean, I get it. They're a regional foe, but I've always just talked about how Air Force, they care about Navy and Army. CSU cares about CU and Wyoming. It's always felt a little bit forced to me. Maybe less so on the basketball side than on the football side. It's just kind of a normal conference game for me. Like, to me, playing Air Force doesn't feel like playing Wyoming. It feels like playing Nevada or playing New Mexico or anybody else. But you have an opportunity here, if you can capitalize on the moment, to potentially win the league, which in November would have seemed insane. Mile High Minute says, we're hoping for the Rams to go 2-1 over the next 3, right? Yeah, I think realistically, just from a tiebreaker standpoint, I mean, stealing one in the pit would be absolutely massive, just because then you don't get swept by one of the top teams. If you could, at the very least, split against Utah State and New Mexico over these next 10, take care of business at home. You can't afford any losses like that. You got to get the second game on the Springs. I've talked about how you probably got to sweep the bottom 3 or 4. And the fact that Nevada's in that's a little bit crazy given the level of talent that they have, but they're emotionally checked out. That team's thrown in the towel. So you got to, sweep San Jose State, who's frisky. You've already swept Fresno, who's been more competitive of late. They're only 1-4 over their last 5, but that was their first league win. They've gone to OT on the road twice. They lost both of those games, heartbreakingly, but they're a lot more frisky. I'm actually glad that CSU's got that one out of the way here. But San Jose State, they're a team you can't overlook. Wyoming coming into Fort Collins, you can never overlook them. But if you can beat San Diego State at home, which is huge, if you could potentially steal one in the pit, that'd be massive. But you got to probably win I think 500 over the next 4 is mandatory, but if you could go 3-1, that really gives you a strong opportunity to win the league just from a tiebreaker standpoint. But the fact that you're even in this spot, I think, is really fun. And realistically, outside of like going 9-1 or something over these next 10 with just a bunch of insane wins, your most likely path to the NCAA tournament would be by winning the Mountain West tournament in Vegas. I don't know how different that is even as of now. You look at all the bracket projections, they're still significantly on the outside looking in, but you get a win in the pit. You beat a Utah State team who's been in and out of the top 25 for most of the year. Now all of a sudden you're cooking with some gas. You've got some real national momentum. San Diego State, even if they're struggling, a win over them always goes a long way in terms of national perception. And from a metric standpoint, a win over them would be huge. For CSU, it's going to be, you got to steal a couple against these top teams to help the metrics, and you've got to avoid some catastrophic losses. And honestly, the fact that they've been able to beat Air Force and Wyoming convincingly, the fact that a 1-point game at halftime ended up being a 21-point victory, that's huge. I roll my eyes a little bit about how much it seems to matter for these teams to blow out the bad teams when it comes to the net and stuff like that, but it plays a role. So if you can win these games against lesser competition convincingly, and you can, hold your own against the other top teams, steal a couple of them, I don't think you're going to run the table, but you went 8-2 over the first 10. Can you go 8-2 again? Steal a couple against the top teams, avoid bad losses, 16 wins, you're going to be right there. I don't know if it would guarantee you a league title, but I would imagine that would have you right there in the mix, because all these other top 10 teams are going to have to play each other as well. And I'm right there with you, Kyle, in the Toyota chat. This team has more grit than previous years. They're tough, man. They're battle tested. And that's not to say that teams in previous years were soft or anything like that. I just think it's the benefit of having so many veterans. You have a lot of guys on this team that have played a lot of basketball. Now, it took a while for all the pieces to come together. They struggled a little bit more out of the gate than I anticipated, but you can see they figured out their roles, and everybody just kind of stays true to what they're supposed to do. There's not a lot of hero ball out there. There's not a lot of, guys pulling up from, half court, jacking up dumb shots. I just feel like they're playing really smart team first basketball on both ends of the floor. And you're getting a lot of key contributions from a lot of different guys. I mean, Nate Clifford, he had 22 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, continues to flirt with that triple-double. I want him to get it so bad. I think it would be so cool to have him be the first player in school history to do that. He's the second D1 player in the last decade to have 3 straight 27-7 games. Let me pull up my Twitter real quick. I want to make sure I credit the statistician for that, because that's an awesome stat. Used to be an ESPN guy. Jared Burson, Colorado State's Nate Clifford, in his last 3 games, 22 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 24, 8-7, 27-7. Second D1 player in the last decade, along with Penn's AJ Brodeur in 2020 to have 3 straight 27-7 games. I get that Donovan Dent, probably the front runner for Mountain West Player of the Year as of now. I think there's an argument, and it's kind of a lot like the Jokic Embiid debate a couple of years ago. It's not even a debate anymore, but when Embiid was healthy and he was balling and he's putting up crazy numbers, I think a lot of what people on the Jokic side of things argued is that it's not only does Jokic have this insane statistical production, it's that he's lifting up this team and making such an individual impact that they're legitimate contenders. And where would they be without him? I mean, CSU was picked to finish 7th. We've seen some young guys really step up. I'm really excited about Jalen Crocker-Johnson. He was great in the first half. He had 13 points. Kyan Evans continues to play great basketball. He had a career high 8 assists. His 3 highest assist totals of his career have all come this month. They've all been home games and conference games, so he's really playing well. Also had a career high on rebounds. So, I mean, there's a lot of guys making key contributions for this team. But what Neek is doing is absurd. And, he's a lot... I don't want to throw around the Jokic talk too loosely, but I just mean, Jokic's greatest strength is not only is he a baller, it's that he elevates everybody around him. And I think Neek has done that. Josh says, is there an argument for co-player of the year? I feel that's happened in the Mountain West before. I think it could happen. especially if CSU like were to win the league or something like that, or those two finish tied for first. Like, it'd be hard to separate them because they're both top 5 scorers. They both make impact outside of scoring. Dent gets a ton of steals. He's a guy that creates things, but Neek's assist numbers are up. He's the best defensive rebounder in the league. He gets blocks. He gets steals as well. His numbers on that side of the ball are a little bit down this year, but not by a significant margin. He's doing crazy things right now. And the fact that it's even a conversation, I think, is pretty cool. And it's a testament to him and how much he's grown the last couple of years. Because you go back, you watch some of those games late in his career at CU, and he just looks lost out there. He doesn't have any confidence. They didn't use him right at all. It was funny. I took so much flack when Neek announced his commitment to CSU. And one of the things that I talked about was that getting to play with a true facilitator was going to open up everything in his game. I was going to allow his athleticism to shine. They were going to put him in a position to get catch and shoot threes, to get cuts to the hoop for open dunks. That's exactly what they did. But he's built off that. He's not even just that guy anymore. He came in and he scratched here, he more than surpassed, what I thought he can be. And now he's a legitimate first round prospect. And not just because he's freaky athletic. The athleticism was always going to translate. He's making all the right reads. He's making great passes. Still needs to tighten up the handle a little bit. I think in terms of NBA caliber defenses, they're gonna pick his pockets a little bit. He can be a little loose with the basketball at times, but his bounce, his ability to rebound, his defensive impact, all of that was going to translate. And he just continues to add more and more to his bag offensively. It's been so impressive to see how much he's grown. And I just think that this team has got real quality leadership with Neek at the top. And I think everybody is accountable. Like, it's a good group of guys. I think they're pretty locked into the mission at hand. You don't got kids getting in trouble, off the court or anything like that. They're playing fundamental basketball, and the things that they're doing well, sharing the basketball, rebounding, basically all the fundamentals are things that you can replicate, and it's sustainable. And that's what's encouraging to me. It's not just like, oh, they got hot one night and one night they hit 16 threes and they pulled off, a big upset. Like, it's great when you have performances like that. And they are a pretty good 3-point shooting team, probably top to bottom, more consistent than the Rams have been most years in the Medved era. Roddy could be a little bit streaky. I think his numbers as a whole are pretty good, but he was a little bit streaky. Zay was money, especially at the end. But it's been a while since top to bottom you had a team that could get this many guys. I mean, Jalen Lake, Kyan Evans, Neek are all what I would say are elite 3-point shooters, and Bowen has that in him. He's a little bit classic, like 6-man off the bench. Some games it's going to be 0 for 5, and other games it's going to be 6 for 8 from deep. But he plays with some fire. And I like this. I say that, there's some FU to this team. Like, we're not going to get punked. They've got some fight, and you've seen it from guys you don't always necessarily expect. I've seen Ethan Morton, get into it with some guys. Bowen Bourne plays with fire out there. Nicola Japa, who gets an opportunity to play, which I thought was great because honestly, and I've talked about this, you're not getting enough juice from the fives right now between Bemba, Jorgensen. Like, you need a little bit more rebounding there. And I just want to see him get a small opportunity. Now, he's got to learn how to be a more impactful defender without picking up fouls. He almost fouled out in 5 minutes. And part of that is because he got that tee, but he cuts to the hoop. He showed some good spacing in terms of like rim protection. He just gives you a little bit of a different element out there. And I like that he had some fire. I think this team can use more of that, frankly. And I like that Nico Medved didn't pull the plug. It was a gut feeling. We could use a little bit of juice out there. He comes out. He's probably excited. He hasn't had a lot of opportunity to play. Makes a couple of silly plays. Right off the bat, he had a turnover where Neek tried to get him the ball in lane, kind of dribbles it off his own leg. Missed a 3, but it was a good attempt. And then he gets the tee, goes to the bench for a while, but they come back in. Then he gets the and one. He gets a dunk. The crowd's going nuts. I love that. I love that it got to be a growing moment. And, we asked Nico Medved about it, and he said it was kind of just a gut call. Felt like they could use some juice from him out there. He brought it. So we're going to play a video here of Nico Medved talking about Nicola Japa. He also gives some insight into the attitude adjustment that went down at halftime. Nico is more of a teacher. He's not I'm a scream in your face, throw chairs type coach. But when he does get after you, I think the guys listen. And I think he has a really good sense of this team's pulse of when I need to push, when I need to fall back a little bit. And obviously we saw a great second half response from CSU. So here's that video of Nico Medved giving some thoughts on all of those things.
Second half.
You mentioned the points in the paint. I think you guys had 8 straight to start that second half and then got to the line a couple times after that. Did you feel like the mentality offensively was a little complacent at times in that first half, settling for jumpers?
I thought, like, the first part of the game it was good, and then I thought we kind of, towards the end of that last half of the first half, I thought it was just kind of soft. We threw some shots up over our head. We got the ball stripped from us. I just don't think we played. Well, I don't think we played with the right mentality on either end of the floor. We settled. Didn't play with a lot of force. And that's what happened in the first half. I mean, we were right there. But again, give the team credit, man. I thought they really changed the narrative, and they came out in the second half and really guarded their tail off. And I thought we were the more aggressive team.
What do you tell Joppa? I mean, hadn't had a ton of playing time, gets a technical foul, but then you put him back out there, and then he makes a couple of plays.
Like I said, he's really done a great job of staying ready. He obviously helped us in the Boise game, and I just felt like, sometimes it's game to game. I just felt the way their fives were kind of big, physical, and whatever. We just needed a little bit more juice at that spot, and it was just a gut call. I just said, go in there, because I didn't like the way we were playing. And I'll give Rashawn credit. Like, I challenged Rashawn at the time. I just didn't think we were – he's better than that. And you know what? He came in after that, and I thought he played with more juice. And that's why I coach such great guys. I mean, it was – the response to my challenge them at halftime, the response to me challenge guys, there's no roll in their eyes or anything like that. They respond, and that's because we have good guys who really, really care.
How do you kind of gauge the right time to have a little bit of fire and brimstone halftime? Obviously, if you do it every game, it doesn't work. But
I'm not. I mean, been around me. That's not my MO. I'm not like that. But I think what they know is when it does happen, they know I'm serious, and I think what they realize is I'm usually right. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not that's not my mentality. I'm a teacher, but sometimes that is teaching. We all need it. You know what I mean? Sometimes we need a kick in the tail. We need truth tellers in our life. I'm just telling them the truth, and so yeah, it's picking your spots and all that stuff like that. But that's what the team needed. That's what some guys needed, and they responded.
We need truth tellers. I love that. And I like I said, I just think Medved has a great feel for the pulse of this team. I like the direction that they're heading. Realistically, the next 3, 4, 5 games even probably dictate whether you're truly a contender in the conference. BJ Rains, I know, stirred up some CSU fans when he said that CSU had a fairly easy schedule to this point. I would push back because I would say if you look at Boise's schedule, it's not that different. The biggest difference is that they haven't played Utah State yet, and they've played Fresno twice, which certainly is going to lower the competitive metrics to an extent, but they did beat Boise head-to-head. They've got a win in Reno, which doesn't come easy. San Jose State, who pushed Boise to the brink. CSU wiped the floor with them. I mean, we could go back and forth all day. I don't think he meant anything malicious by it. He got a lot of flack from CSU fans, and that's just part of the fun in the Mountain West. I know everybody goes back and forth. I certainly get it from Wyoming fans and San Diego State fans at times can be pretty intense. Boise fans I get more for on the football side than hoops side. But anyways, that has nothing to do with anything. I just like the fight of this team. I like the direction that they're heading. As far as Nicola Joppa and his role goes, I would like to see him get a couple of minutes every night. Nico isn't a guy at this stage of the season that traditionally does a massive overhaul of the rotation or something like that, unless you absolutely had to. I just think, especially given that Bemba, his dependability at times can be a little bit of a question mark. He's super impactful when he's out there, but he's had injuries throughout his career. You don't want to be so dependent on him being what makes all of this work. And you don't want to completely kill Jorgensen's confidence either, because we've seen some big moments from him. He's very, very skilled. He's a guy that can do it all offensively, and he's grown defensively as well. He's showing better instincts out there. He's not hacking quite as much, but they need more from him from a rebounding standpoint. And I feel that way about Bemba as well. And I just feel like Japa gives you a little bit of juice down there and potentially could allow you to do some things from a spacing standpoint that are a little bit different than the other guys. Now, I don't know, is he a capable of enough passer to play the 5 for long stretches? Probably not. Like, I don't envision him playing much more than like 8 minutes a night or something like that, if he plays at all. But the fact that he's stepped up in a spot start and now come off the bench and seemingly made a good enough impression with the staff. I don't think getting a technical foul was the best way to prove he should be getting more playing time. But at the same time, I kind of like the fire. I kind of like that he had the intensity. And in his defense, the officiating was pretty rough in that game. And I actually thought Medved was going to get teed up a couple of times. There was a stretch where Jorgensen just got hammered in the paint, no call. CSU then gets a ticky-tacky call on the other end. And I'm not a guy, like, I try really hard, unless it truly is the story of the night. Like, I try not to be a guy that just every tweet about bad calls, officiating. That's a part of basketball. You're going to get some calls that go against you. You got to be able to respond. You've got to be able to adjust to the way that a whistle is being blown that night. Now, where it's really frustrating is when you get inconsistency and you think a game's being officiated one way and then all of a sudden it changes. And I do feel like we see a lot of that in the Mountain West. I also feel like we see just a lot of soft whistles that ultimately hurt the teams come March, because they're not prepared for the physicality that's allowed in the NCAA tournament, because they have been conditioned to not play that way by the officiating in the conference. And I think we've seen that hurt teams like San Diego State consistently over the years. They play more physical than anyone, but then, it ramps up in the tournament. And I just think it's something that the league could potentially take a look at. All right, we got a bye this weekend for CSU men's basketball. I will do Mountain West Power Rankings tomorrow, but much needed. I asked the guys how they were feeling. The legs are heavy at this stage of the year, but got a massive, massive road game coming up. I do like that you have an opportunity to potentially get fresh here, get the legs back, and hopefully we see an inspired effort next Wednesday night. If you're looking for more content from me, I've got some football coverage coming your way. Obviously, we'll talk more about the staff stuff and what that could potentially mean down the line. Recruiting, all that fun stuff. Looks like Cannon Valenzuela, who we had on the show, who I've been talking up for months, has been bumped up to a 4-star prospect by 247. I don't really know how that stuff works. We saw the same thing happen with Dagan Myers. Like, dude had been unranked for a long stretch, and then all of a sudden you look up one day and he's the highest rated recruit in the state of Colorado for the 2024 cycle. Weird how some of that stuff works. If you got any questions, comments, get them in the Toyota chat. We'll get to as many as I can before we get out of here. I know we've got a couple of starred, so we'll go to Taylor here. We rooting for Utah State against UNM on Saturday, or too soon to know who to root for? Yeah, I'd make an argument that I think it'd be good for New Mexico to win that one, just to get Utah State another loss. Utah State has, to me, been the most stable team. If I had to place a bet as of today, who I thought was most likely to win the conference, I'd put it on the Aggies, just because they've been so steady. They're lethal. They've got so many guys that can shoot the ball. But really, like, there's still a lot of basketball to be played. Like, very easily could go either way in that sense. But my gut would be that a New Mexico win could potentially be better for CSU long term. We got another question here from Mile High Minute. What do you make of the Mountain West statement yesterday? Is Gloria Navarro worried about UNLV or Air Force leaving the Mountain West? I'm going to talk about this more tomorrow, because I do want to kind of read up on some of the grant of rights stuff and just generally what the consensus is of how enforceable they are if a media rights deal is not in place or not. I will say, and I said this in the intro, I've never seen commissioners in this spot release those type of statements when they're operating from a position of strength. Go back and look at the Pac-12 in 2023. They released a very similar statement. I saw a lot of people sharing the Pam from The Office meme. It's the same picture, not quite, but more or less the same difference. a lot of this is going to come down to whether those poaching penalties are enforceable. And if they are, then there's very likely, UNLV is going to be in the Mountain West. If they're not, and the Mountain West cannot pay UNLV the money that they were promised, now all of a sudden I think UNLV is looking pretty seriously at the Pac. I think Air Force at that point probably goes to the American and just joins up with Navy and Army. They seriously looked at the American, what was that, like 2021 or 2020? CSU did as well. I think CSU and Air Force were much closer to leaving for the American than Boise or San Diego State were. So these things can change in a hurry. A lot can happen behind the scenes. But where there's smoke, there seems to be fires. And I don't know why she would release that statement if there wasn't at least a little bit of validity to the circulating rumors of the Pac-12 and UNLV kind of being open to further discussion behind the scenes. Josh wants to say 1 through 5, 5 being on fire. Where is Norvell on the hot seat ranking? 2. Like I don't think it's as serious as most people would say. I mean, like I would say a 0, to be honest, in most instances, other than just the fact that I do think there's an element of not performing on the brightest stage. I think the Arizona Bowl kind of hurt some of the goodwill that he had established within the community. I think that John Weber and Amy Parsons are very present both online just in general with the pulse of the fan base and how everybody's feeling. And I think that it's just commonly known there's some discontent, and that can always put you in a weird spot. That said, I think it's less likely than more likely that he would actually be, seriously on the hot seat. I think his seat's warm. I just don't think it's hot. It's warming up maybe. And I've said it a million times, but 2024 needs to be the floor and not the ceiling. If they come out and you go like 5-7, even 6-6 next year, yeah, I don't know how secure you are at that spot. It's going to be really interesting to see how they handle all this, whether he gets an extension or not. I wonder at this point if maybe they just try and ride out next season and see how things go and make a determination from there. But obviously with the move to the Pac-12 coming, it's going to be a major talking point with the fan base, and it's going to be something that people are debating and talking about all season, unless this team comes out and, really kicks the door down, which we've been desperately waiting for them to do basically since 2014. Been a long time. All right, that's all I've got for you guys this morning. I appreciate everybody that tuned in with us. I'll give you guys more information as it comes. If anybody wasn't here at the beginning, I'll try and sum it up real quick before we get out. Essentially, CSU does not confirm my report that Matt Mumme will be the offensive play caller. I stand by my reporting, and I am saying that will be the case. I do not know what the deal is. Could be semantics, could be Norvell had a specific vision for how he wanted this unrolled. I don't know, because I can't speak for him. So until I have an opportunity to talk with him on the record, we're still kind of in a weird place of limbo, unless CSU just comes out and outright clarifies it. Maybe we find out in spring ball. Maybe we don't find out officially until fall, and they're just really coy with the whole process. But I stand behind my reporting. That is what I believe will happen. I wouldn't come out and put myself in this position if I did not stand behind my reporting. Don't do stuff like this very often. So that's where we're at. Much love, Ram Nation. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.